Summer routines live or die by how easy they are, and honestly, if something takes too much effort, I'm out. That's why Groons is my go-to. It's my one daily pack of gummies covering my greens, vitamins, and minerals. Plus, it has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber, which is more than 2 cups of broccoli. No mixing powders, no giant pills, no hassle. I just rip open the pack and I'm done. They taste good and they make it easy to stay on top of my health, even when life gets busy. Save up to 52% with the code PODCAST at Groons.co. That's code PODCAST at GRUNS.co.
I remember when you guys were booking the van. I remember telling you, you're probably getting a manual transmission. Like, I can't tell you how many times I used to, like, you request the automatic on like the national website or whatever, and then you get there and they're like, no, we don't have any automatics, and you're just like,
well, this one,
here we go.
I knew it was manual because it set it on there, and so I knew that we were going to get a manual transmission. And in hindsight, we would have had to have one. Some of the hills that we had to drive up and down, if we were in an automatic, I'm not sure we'd have gotten it, including the Olive Grove, like going up this steep incline to get out of the Olive Grove.
Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. I'm coming to you from Raleigh, North Carolina, morning of Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. Anthony is back from his European vacation. Man, it looks surreal, serene, I should say. That's probably a better word. It probably was surreal for you, too, to see your oldest son get married. But then it looked like an incredible Italian vacation after. You could admit you liked that better.
I can admit that it was good to be back in the homeland. It was just an amazing trip, and to see AJ get married, that was in Greece on the island of Corfu, and to have our whole family together there was really amazing. And really, they did an unbelievable job with the organization and the planning, and it all went off without a hitch. It was a terrific celebration for them. I'm so happy for he and his new wife, Ariana, as they start their life together. And then the rest of our family took advantage of the fact that we were all over there together and went into the Puglia area, spent a couple days in Matera, a couple days in Lecce, the final day in Polignano Mare. And I've never been down to that part of Italy before, the Puglia area, kind of the heel of the boot, so to speak. And it was beautiful. The ancient city of Matera, one of the oldest cities in Europe. Lecce just kind of had a Venice feel to it, walking the alleyways in that old town, and then the beach town of Polignano Mare was beautiful. And we had dinner in a place that it wasn't the best meal I've ever had by a wide margin, but it might have been the coolest setting for a dinner that I've ever experienced. In the city of Polignano Mare, they carved this restaurant out of caves and on the side of the waterfront. And holy cow, was it the setting. As we sat there having dinner and we just looked around and thought, I mean, could you find 5 better dinner spots in the world? I don't think you could. It was that good. It was spectacular. And, I know we're going to shift our attention to hockey away from my family, but boy, did we have a number of moments where we sat on that trip and just thought, how lucky are we and how blessed are we to be sitting here with the whole family, sipping wine on the shores of the Mediterranean or the Adriatic, and in these beautiful settings. We're really blessed, really lucky. Couldn't be happier for AJ, and just really thrilled to have had that opportunity to travel with the whole family.
And did you I remember when you guys were planning that part of the trip, you were renting like a sort of a van. Did you drive all the way from did you fly to Italy and then rent the car? How did you do all that?
Yeah, we flew from Corfu into Bari, and then we rented this big van to hold 8 people and 2 weeks worth of luggage. So I was the driver of this old manual transmission.
Oh man,
I don't know what you call it, a super van. And Vinny was my navigator, which it was that part of the trip, it actually ended up being quite fun just to have that extra time every day, everybody piling in the van together. It did make me miss story time with Peter on the buses of our normal trips where all you have to do is get up in the morning and roll into your seat and lean your head against the window and listen to stories. And this time I was the driver, and it was a little, imagine the little streets that we've experienced when we've walked in Florence or Venice or some of those other ancient Italian cities. That's what it was like. And I was driving this van through the streets like that in Matera and Lecce as we're trying to find the places where we were going to stay. So that part got a little bit dicey from time to time. But yeah, so we flew into Bari. We drove to Matera. Matera, I don't know if you're aware of it. I think it might be the oldest city in Europe. It's one of the oldest. But up until the 1950s, they had people still living in caves carved into the side of the mountains there, and which it's amazing when you think about how recently that was still happening. Spent a couple days there, made an unbelievable drive out to this olive grove, which it was. So we punch in the address to this olive grove, and it was about an hour drive from where we were staying in Matera. And we're driving, and I'm not exaggerating this when I say we turned off this road, and we're driving down a driveway that couldn't have been more than 2 feet wider than our van, and winding down. It turned out to be kind of still a road, but it felt like you were and all of a sudden it just turned to dirt and then to grass, and we came to the end of the road, and we're like, well, it says we're here, but we had no idea. We might have been. There was a time where Vinny and I are looking at each other like, are we sure we put in the right address here? Because it feels like we're just driving into the forest. And sure enough, it was the place, and that turned out to be one of the highlights of the trip. It was kind of like, you remember that the vineyard we went to in Tuscany where the guy and his wife ended up being the people that come home to cater Jack Nicklaus's charity golf event? And it had that feel to it. And this woman and her husband had both just retired from their normal jobs for a simpler life, bought this olive grove. Turns out she's a chef that flies to the U.S. and does catering for major events and like for superstars in the United States, like entertainment industry stars. And the guy just happened to he was like an architect that now just also wanted to own an olive grove. He did the grilling. We had just an unbelievable experience there, and really throughout, it was just, it exceeded expectations. So it was a fun part of Italy to visit. And yeah, I was the driver of the van for the week and got us everywhere we were going. But our ride home yesterday was 24 hours of travel from the time we left our hotel to the time we pulled into our driveway, starting with a 3-hour drive across Italy to go to Naples, because we flew home from Naples and drove all the way across the country to get there, and then flew home. So that was a long day, kind of a long, tiring end to it, but I bounced back now today after a good night's sleep last night. We're ready to roll.
And you got a golf tournament today. Anthony, when's the last time you drove stick shift? That's what I want to know.
It was probably... The first few cars I had were stick shift cars, so it was I learned how to drive on a manual transmission Volkswagen pickup. And when I was a junior in college, the first car I bought was a 1981 Toyota Tercel, and we called it the 81 white car because it looked like those cars like all the villains in the old James Bond movies drove. And so that was probably the last one. No, because we bought a Toyota Corolla together, so it was probably early 90s, so probably 30 plus years since I had driven one. And I will say, so yesterday as I was back in the States driving, there were about 3 times where I reached down for the stick shift, like to shift gears, and had to remind myself, and no, I'm back on a manual transmission now.
I remember when you guys were booking the van, I remember telling you, you're probably getting a manual transmission. Like, I can't tell you how many times I used to, you request the automatic on like the national website or whatever, and then you get there and they're like, no, we don't have any automatics, and you're just like, okay,
this one,
here we go.
I knew it was manual because it set it on there, and so I knew that we were going to get a manual transmission. And in hindsight, we would have had to have one. Some of the hills that we had to drive up and down, if we were in an automatic, I'm not sure we'd have gotten it, including the Olive Grove. Like going up this steep incline to get out of the Olive Grove, it was I'm going to send you a picture too, because when we pulled up there and I parked outside this gate, and the guy came out, and you know how it sounds like Italians are always yelling at you when they just talk to you. And he was like, no, you can't park there. That's a road. And I was looking, I was like, a road? When was the last time a car drove out of this field of grass? And it was, but if we didn't have a manual transmission, I'm not sure we could have gotten up the hill. Like, it was that steep. We drove up probably a half a mile in first gear just to have enough power to get up the hill.
I can't even imagine being in that van. I would have been scared to death. By the way, thanks for everybody for appeasing this beginning of the podcast. I could have just called Anthony and discussed this trip yesterday, but I knew we'd have this podcast, so might as well do it here.
Right, well, and and we're taping the show like at the crack of dawn in the Twin Cities, because I'm going to challenge. I've got a stretch lab appointment today, my first one since I got back, and I told him before I left, this will be the challenge for you, because I'll have been sitting on a plane and a van and a bus and everything else for about 36 hours straight, and now you're going to have to try and get this old body loosened up again. So that's my morning challenge today.
Yeah, well, good luck there. And then then you get the golf right today.
I do have golf. I played in a golf tournament, the Randy Shaver charity event yesterday, and Randy had asked me. I play in his tournament every year. It's a great tournament for a great cause, and he had sent me. I said, I usually play in the morning flight, which is at like 7:00, and I said, I don't know if I can commit to 7:00. I think I'll be getting home at like 2:30 in the morning the night before. And he said, well, could you play the afternoon, which was a 2:00 start? I said, I think I can commit to that. So I had a couple other things I had to get to when I got home, just reorganization in the U.S. kind of thing. But I pulled up, and he had told my group apparently that he's coming straight from Italy. So I don't even know if he's going to show up. And it was about 12 hours after I'd gotten back to my house that I was on the tee with these guys. Had a great group. They were, 3 of them were former Division I hockey players, it was a fun group to play with. But holy cow, did I feel badly for him. I haven't touched a golf club. I haven't swung in 2 weeks. I really haven't slept in about 36 hours. And so that was a little bit of an adventure yesterday. We'll be better today.
That's good.
Hi, this is Anthony LaPanta. I recently made my first visit ever to a stretch lab. I stopped at the location out in Maple Grove and had a great stretch practitioner named Tom, who was terrific. I can't wait to get back. As you try to fight the aging process, which I'm right there with you, trying to battle it, flexibility is one of the big keys. I felt great after my first stretch, and I'm planning to go back weekly. There are 10 locations all across the Twin Cities. I highly recommend checking out Stretch Lab.
Hey, it's Russo for Aquarius Home Services, your independent authorized Connecticut dealer. It's summer, and that means home improvement season. At Aquarius, they know managing a household and all the expenses that comes with it is no easy task. They also know how important having worry-free water is in your home every day. Your family deserves water you can trust. You use it every day for drinking, cooking, cleaning, and bathing. That's why I'm excited to share that their summer trade-in and trade-up program has started. Trade in your old water softener and trade up to a Connecticut whole home water treatment system. The best part, get an additional $500 off on top of their summer sale prices. Say goodbye to hard water, rust stains, and unwanted contaminants, and hello to cleaner, worry-free water flowing through every faucet, every day, all day. It all starts with a free water test scheduled today at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended. And don't forget to tell them Russo sent you.
All right, so I'm at the Stanley Cup Final, as I mentioned, but we'll first start talking about the Wild. Feels like we haven't been together in months, Anthony. It has been a while since oh, the dogs are back. It's been a while since you've called the game. I do think, not to speak out of turn, but I do think the Wild are getting close to announcing what the plans are for next season. So that'll come here in the next week or two. Obviously they're having amateur scouting meetings that started Monday, which we will get to in a second, on Judd Brackett's departure to go to the Toronto Maple Leafs and that loss for the organization. But the one thing is, Joe Smith, my colleague, checked in with Bill Guerin yesterday and unrestricted free agents and all that type of stuff. They did have their pro meetings last week. According to Billy, to Joe, they're not close on free agents yet, but I do think that action will start this week. I have talked to people around the league about what's going on with the Wild, and I get the impression that Marcus Johansson is somebody that they have interest in bringing back, but Marcus also wants a more representative contract this time of what his talent level is. Obviously, he took the league minimum essentially last year, and I don't think he's willing to do that now. I don't think he's going to break the bank by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he wants a couple-year deal, and we'll see if that's too much for the Wild to stomach on whatever that AAV would be. I would think in the $2 million range. If I remember his year before that, before the 800, he signed 2 times 2. So maybe they go back to that type of deal, Anthony. We'll let you talk about Marcus in a second. Zuccarello is somebody else I know that they'd want back. Nick Foligno is still deciding if he wants to play. And then the other one, as we've mentioned over and over again, is Michael McCarron. And, the fact that he will probably have to take a discount to stay here, but it's somebody that they're most desired to have back here. I kind of wonder, Anthony, if it's going to be Tarasenko or Johansson. Tarasenko obviously had a good bounce back year, wouldn't you say? But I do think that maybe they feel that's where you could put a younger body, a cheaper body, maybe, somebody that might be able to play a little more consistently. It's funny because I was talking to Ivan Barbashev yesterday, and he went on and on about what Vladimir Tarasenko meant to him when he started in St. Louis and how he took him under his wing, and that's what he's doing with Pavel Dorofeyev now. And he said he learned that from Vladimir, and I told him, well, it's the same thing now in Minnesota. Vladimir took Danila Yurov under his wing, and it's sort of the same thing of this guy playing it forward. I know that's a lot of words. Go for it.
Well, I think there's a couple things there. One, and I think we've talked about it before, I've felt going into this offseason that it might be a 2 out of 3 situation with Zuccarello, Tarasenko, and Johansson. There's probably, I could see a way where it seems hard to imagine that you could include all 3 of those guys moving forward, but maybe. And I felt like it more likely was a 2 out of 3 situation. It probably depends as much on what is available in the trade market and who the top 6 guy is that they go out and pursue and how that trickles down throughout the roster. I do think Tarasenko brought a lot more to the table than I expected in terms of behind the scenes and off the ice. I really didn't have any reason to believe he wouldn't, but I didn't know him at all, didn't know well enough what he might bring in that area. And it seemed like he had a bigger impact there than what I would have expected him to have. Had a great bounce back season, certainly still has the ability to play, but if the Wild looked at each one of those guys individually, they'd say, yeah, we'd love to have him back. We'd love to have him back, including McCarron and Nick Foligno. But there are only so many spots on a roster, and you just have to make some of those decisions. To me, it feels like with those 3 guys, it might be a 2 out of 3 at max. I think McCarron, I still believe that there will be some other teams out there that overpay might not be the exact right term to use, but pay more than the Wild are able or willing to pay. I have no idea where his mindset is. If he'd liked it here enough to say, I believe in this team enough to accept a little less. I have no idea. Nick Foligno, I'm sure, is a guy that they would, if he wants to play another season, the same kind of role and likely cheaper than what Tarasenko would be. I'm sure that they'd love to have him come back if it was on that veteran minimum kind of deal where it would be just, hey, let's just bring him back for one more year. Even if he's not a in the lineup every night guy, he'd still have value to this club.
Yeah, it will be interesting because if, every person you take back, you are probably going to have to, not every person, but like if you brought in Nick Foligno back, you might have to then look at trading a Yakov Trenyan or a Nico Sturm or something like that. So every signing kind of moves a ball in a different court there. And I think that is the other thing that Bill Guerin is juggling now is, they're talking trade with a lot of teams. He admitted that to me the other day when I talked to him, that a lot of teams have been calling him, just trying to get the feel of what the Wild are doing. And so, when you have all these different moving parts, that's why I kind of do think that you really want to try to re-sign a lot of these guys pretty quickly here to just get more of I don't want to just say fiscal certainty of what the cap structure looks like, but a certainty in terms of the roster, because then that might lead you to have to do some other things. And so,
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying is if you looked at each one of these guys individually, you'd say, yes, I'd love to have them back. But you can't have all of them because you just don't have that many spots on your roster. And some of those other guys you mentioned are guys that in the trade market are going to bring something in return where, so that there is that too. And that's why we've always talked about how Billy's going to listen to anybody who calls. I don't get the feel that the way the Wild approach these kind of things is to make a bunch of exploratory phone. I think when they call on somebody, they've decided this is a guy we want. I don't think they spend a bunch of time like, well, let's just call them and just see what does that take? What would that take? What would that? I don't get the feel that that's how they approach it. I think when they make the calls, it's because they've narrowed it down to these are 3 or 4 or 5 guys that we have interest in, whether it be at the trade deadline or the free agency market. And when the calls are coming the other way, that's a different story. And certainly you're going to listen. And I think Billy has proven how aggressive he can be and willing to make a deal with just about anybody on his roster if the right offer is made.
Yeah, without a doubt. And in the Athletic in the last couple of weeks, you could see we've done everything from trade tiers to UFA tiers and things like that. So if you have a doubt as a listener of who might be available, as Billy says, everybody's touchable. I think that's probably a little simplistic. I don't think he's moving, guys like Boldy and people like that. But I guess if Connor McDavid is available, maybe. But you know what I mean? Like it'll be, I do think, though, the only thing I will say from an exploratory standpoint is I do think that you don't know until you ask. So, I do think he's doing stuff like, calling Toronto to see what it would take to get Austin Matthews, if it's even feasible, which right now we're not hearing that it is. I've talked to about a half a dozen GMs in the last couple of weeks that said that every indication they're getting right now is that Austin is not on the table. I'm sure he's calling Ottawa about Brady Tkachuk. You don't know if Dylan Larkins could be had unless you call Detroit. Nico Hischier is the one guy because I know that the Devils are going to try to re-sign him. But if he starts to give them indication that he's not willing to extend, he's somebody that could go to market, and maybe he could be the most logical to get. The problem is, again, we're in a league where everybody has cap space now, seemingly, and we're in a league where everybody needs a top center. So the question is then, do the Wild have enough assets to get these type of trades done? What would you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting time, and the cap going up we talked a lot about this when we talked hockey on this recent trip. A couple of AJ's guests and groomsmen are big hockey fans, so we spent a lot of time just talking about the landscape right now of the NHL, and it is very different because of the point you just made. The cap going up has changed it dramatically. If the cap was going up just incrementally and teams were in a more stable, I guess, salary structure, I think we would see a very different trade market and free agency market. But now so many teams have been able to lock up their star players because what's a fair price now, teams are thinking 4 or 5 years from now, it's going to be a steal when it's in terms of the percentage of the team cap that deal is going to represent. So it has made it a challenge, and it's made it, I think, teams are going to have to build through trade rather than free agency more than maybe we've seen in the salary cap era these next couple of seasons. So, and that's why I think it's such a difficult time to make decisions on your own. It's the marginal type players, not the star players. All the teams are trying to lock up the stars because they know that by the end of that deal, it's going to be a team friendly deal. But now you're filling around the blanks, guys, and these are the guys we're talking about with the Wild. Those guys are harder to lock in right now because you have to wait until you can make that trade to see exactly how it's going to affect your roster and what you have to work with, rather than free agency, where usually you'd have a little bit better idea that, okay, this is about what it's going to take, and these are the 3 centers or the 6 wings or the 3 defensemen that we know are going to be available. You just don't know in the trade market who might suddenly be available for the right price. And that could come out of nowhere when all of a sudden a deal gets made somewhere else that now changes somebody else's willingness to deal a player. Things can happen fast in the trade world.
You've heard me talk about the Onyx Hunt app on here for years. Well, Make sure you download the onX Fish app as well, because before you even pull the boat out of the garage, you can sort lakes by species, trophy potential, and keeper potential, so you're not just guessing and you're going out with a plan. You could also use the onX Fish app to filter walleye, bass, panfish, whatever you're chasing, and see species abundance and size data so you actually know what's in the lake before you launch. Everything you need to get there and get on fish is all in one app. Boat ramps, lake access points, public versus private land, points of interest like bait shops and camping. It's all built into the app. No more scrambling around 3 different apps or outdated reports. onX Fish gives you the proven fishing area data and local insights that used to take years to learn. So you could do a decade of knowledge all in about 10 minutes. So download onX Fish on the App Store or visit onxmaps.com/fish. Spring fishing is here. Go find a lake you've been driving past for years and finally find out if it's worth the launch.
Life comes with a lot of things to remember, and Great Clips doesn't think your haircut should be one of them. That's why they use Clip Notes to save your haircut details, so no matter which stylist you see or Great Clips salon you visit, it's easy to feel like the best version of you. So do yourself a favor. Say goodbye to guesswork and hello to a great haircut every time. Download the app today. Great Clips. It's going to be great. You've heard me talk about Lucy before, and there's a reason it keeps coming up. A bunch of my friends have made the switch to Lucy, and they're calling it a top-notch lip pillow. Their words, not mine, but they're serious. They say that it's one of the best pouches on the market. The favorite among my friends seems to be Lucy Breakers. Each pouch has a crackable flavor capsule that delivers long-lasting, on-demand flavor that doesn't dry out. Flavors like mint, apple cider, and mango, there are plenty to choose from. So whether you're already a pouch person or just curious about why everyone keeps talking about Lucy, give it a try. Not sure where to start? Grab the variety pack. It comes with 6 flavors, so you can find the one that fits you best. Lucy is a top-tier premier nicotine pouch. According to my buddies, it's not even close. Get 20% off your first order when you buy online at lucy.co/worstseats with promo code worstseats. That's lucy.co/worstseats. Promo code worstseats. And if you don't want to wait, use the store locator to find where you can pick up Lucy near you. And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every customer is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
Yeah, absolutely. Judd Brackett, the director of amateur scouting, after almost 6 years, he was hired in July of 2020, I believe, because I remember where I was when that happened, actually, when I found out that, like, the night before. And then that was the pandemic. So remember his first draft was, I think, in October, basically. That's when they took Marco Rossi. I remember covering that from home, too. That was just so weird, just to do that type of, to do drafts from your house. Isn't that a strange time back then? But Judd has left.
Phil's on duty right now, so I apologize for the background noise.
Which one is that? That's got to be Phil.
Yeah, that's Phil. He'll there could be a dangerous delivery man. You never know. It's those Amazon guys. The next one could be the one that's the villain.
Yeah, exactly. Or Day, I don't know if you I saw a video the other day of a delivery person stealing a cat. So maybe he thinks he's going to get abducted. So anyway, so Judd has left to go to the Toronto Maple Leafs as assistant GM. This has been a long saga of a year for this. I think this actually started last summer. I think that he made a pitch that he wanted, to grow in terms of his responsibilities and role and things like that. In December, the Wild did offer him a contract extension. He did not take it based on the fact that it was the same role. And then I don't think they really talked the last 5 months. So it just felt like this was inevitable. The question was he going to be running their draft if he was leaving in 4 or 5 days after the draft? And the question there is no. Scouting meetings started yesterday, Monday, and he is not in town. He's actually on his way to the Combine now to start his new role with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He did get an AGM role there. And I think it's Director of Player Evaluation, they're calling it. Obviously, look, Judd's record and the Scouts' record, because Judd will be the first person to tell you that it's a staff. Judd's record on hitting on first-round picks, I think, has been, really, really solid. Everybody has pretty much played, except for maybe a Carson Lambos at this point. He played 1 game this past season. I thought it was really good in Columbus. In fact, he got the Hero of the Game hat. And then the other guys, I mean, look, a couple of them are still here, and Wallstedt and Yurov. The other guys help lead them to a trade for a blockbuster in
Quinn
Quinn
Hughes.
Hughes. I think below the first round, I think is areas where I think even the Wild front office were concerned about. They hadn't hit on a lot of second round picks. Obviously, Damon Hunt. We'll see if Hunter Hay could turn out. Huzadinov has become a regular in Boston. Wasn't able to here. The one thing about drafting is beyond the fact that it's not an exact science because you're drafting teenagers. There is also, it's like, once you take the pick, you divorce yourself. Now it's up to the development guys. It's up to the AHL coaches. There's a lot of factors here. So if a guy doesn't hit, I don't think that's necessarily a bad draft pick. But look, there hasn't been a ton after the first round. And I think it is as simple as this. Billy said all the right things yesterday, but if he wanted to keep Judd, it would have been as simple as giving him a promotion, and he just didn't do it. So I think at this point, I think that they just were willing to let him go and explore other options and see if he can get an elevated role. All the power to him. He did. He's very respected in the league. I think there was more than one team interested in him. I think Vancouver would have been interested in him. I think the Boston Bruins would have been interested in him. I'm sure there would have been other teams too if he quote unquote became a free agent July 1. But obviously Toronto grabbed him and he gets the AGM role and gets a chance after more than a decade in this role and much more than that in the NHL. He gets a job that allows him to continue to grow and maybe one day become a GM. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think the one point that was among all of those, I think, is the biggest one, is that you have to remember that the reason the Wild have been able to pull the trigger on the deals they've made already and potentially the deal they're looking at for this summer is because those first round picks were good ones. And the trade up for Zeev Buium was a major move by Minnesota. And if they don't make that trade, I'm not sure Hughes is ever on the table without Buium going the other way in that deal. Mm-hmm. And you have to give the scouts credit for that. Crazy. The other one, I agree with your point about you only get one shot to develop a player. So you really have no idea if it was sometimes when it doesn't work. It could have been a missed pick. It could have been a player that just wasn't developed properly. You really just don't know. It's kind of like parenting. All of a sudden the kid's 20 years old. Well, you don't know if it just was a terrific kid, if you just got lucky, or if your decisions along the way helped mold them. You don't really ever know for certain. So it's hard to ever say, well, this guy, they just flat out missed. Maybe the guy was the right pick at the time, but either he matured differently than they expected or your development style just didn't fit him. You just really never know. But I'm happy for Judd. Best of luck as he heads down a new path. But the challenge now ahead for the Minnesota staff is that they're likely, I would say, well, I don't know what you'd think on this, but my guess is it's less than a 1-in-4 possibility that they own their number one pick in 2027 by the time we get to the end of July this year. It seems like a near certainty that pick is going to be included in some package. So you're going to be looking at whoever's overseeing the draft for the next couple of years, whether it be the guys in-house right now or whoever replaces Judd in that role. They're likely going to have to be trying to fill and rebuild a stack of prospects without the help of a number one pick in the next two drafts.
Absolutely. And if you look, because they've traded so many picks and prospects the last couple of years, their prospect pool, which, Judd helped build to near the top of the league, has obviously plummeted for obvious reasons. And because they don't have a lot of picks, there are a lot of teams that do it this way, but those teams have cups like Vegas does it that way, Colorado does it that way, Florida does it that way, Tampa does it that way, but they have the cups to make it worth it. And I guess my biggest concern with the Wild is that eventually the check's going to come due. They're in this win now mode, but they got to win. And if they don't win, quote unquote, now, at some point, Anthony, this is going to catch up to them. It just will.
And it always does. And, you can, some of the teams you mentioned, Vegas is kind of the one exception where they, for somehow, some way, have yet to have that check come due. But Colorado has a couple times. This is a team that 12 years ago when they won the division and then the Wild knocked them out of the playoffs. It's, well, this is the team that's built to win for years. Well, it was a couple of years later, they're the worst team in the NHL.
And they've won one cup in this entire time.
Right. And that was with the benefit of picking up in the draft the years that McKinnon and Makar both came out. I mean, that's a different situation than what Minnesota's had. Minnesota hasn't had picks in the top 4. So they had that benefit with bottoming out in those years. But, in Florida, you look now, I mean, yes, they just had their run to 3 finals, but here they are out of the playoffs the next year. So, I mean, it isn't easy to maintain your success building that way.
Yeah.
And,
I think Florida will be
we'll
back,
see what
though. Florida's got to deal with their goaltending situation. But the one thing Alexander Barkov just showed is that, his knee might have cost him this season, but my goodness, was he unbelievable in the World Championship to help Finland win it.
But again, now look at Florida and say, but look at what happened the 6 or 8 years before this 3-4 year run that they're on right now. And so they had a lot longer period to build up to this point. And now I think these last couple of years, they've done a remarkable job of building the roster and then keeping the roster. And we'll have to see what happens in the next 3 or 4 years for the Minnesota Wild. I mean, they need one of these years has to be their year to make a significant run in the postseason. I think that would be an obvious understatement.
Judd, one of the really good moves that he did was the year in Montreal when the draft was there, and they had was it Yurov and Ogren, and and they wound up they had Yurov ahead of Ogren, right? It was Wallstedt and now I got to look.
Wallstedt, I believe, was the Lambos year, and
okay, right, yeah. So then it was Yurov and Ogren.
Was the Ogren year.
Yep, and that was, remember, they got the first round pick and that one other, so they had 2 there, but they took a calculated risk that Yurov, there was something going on in that draft that I know has since come out that people can look up. That probably also scared some teams that the Wild knew and did their due diligence that it was untrue. But the Russian bias was the other thing, and so it was really smart that they actually, saved him. He was the guy they had above, and they took Ogren, and then they got Yurov as well. So that worked out. The areas where obviously he'll also be looked at and scrutinized are those early years with all those, you just brought up Lambos, but there was a point where we all thought that they had this incredible blue line of, crop of prospects coming with Spacek and Ryan O'Rourke and Masters, and then they draft Jack Pert over Matty Nyes, and obviously none of those guys have hit just yet, and so we'll see what happens there. But wish Judd luck. I like him a lot, respect him a lot, and really happy for him too that he gets that AGM role that he has wanted. Let's move along to the Stanley Cup Final briefly, Anthony, because you have obviously, we just talked the Stretch Lab appointment. But
it's a challenge for Marnie today to get me stretched out.
Exactly.
That.
So I'm down here at the Stanley Cup Final. We had media day yesterday, which is always a fun thing. You get press conferences with the GMs and the coaches of each respective team, and then every player sits at pods. And I'm working on a ton of stories. One fun thing I'm doing tonight, Anthony, I guess I am kind of scooping myself because it's this will come out before it happens. But I have plans tonight to tailgate with Eric Stahl. And I just think it's a really cool story that 20 years ago he won a cup in this organization, and now he's got his number there on the rafters, and 20 years later his brother is trying to win a cup with the same organization 17 years after he won a cup as a baby with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So really happy for that. So that'll be fun to be out there with Eric and his entire family.
Because if there's one guy that I would think of as a tailgater, it's you.
Yeah. When I say tailgate, I will not be drinking and, making bratwurst, but I will be shadowing him tailgating. And then he's doing another really cool thing before the game that I'll shadow as well. And that story will probably run during the off day tomorrow. The other thing is, obviously we have Gary Bettman's State of the Union today as well. And, have a lot of questions for him on myriad subjects as well. But Anthony, where do you see this going? I mean, obviously I know you got to run, but we didn't really talk about the last round. It was really not a compelling conference final on either side. Obviously, the Canadians just got destroyed, even though they lost 2 overtime games. They were not even close to being on the same level as Carolina. And Vegas shocks the world and takes an injury. It just proves injuries are big. I always loved the Colorado Avalanche fans making fun of the Wild, like that they kept on talking about Joel Eriksson Ek and Jonas Verdin, but now it's all because Nichushkin was hurt and Lehkonen was banged up and Makar was banged up and McKinnon got hurt the last game. And it's like, now it's okay to just say injuries cost you.
Well, I mean, there's a couple things there. One, I think Carolina has proven they were the class of the East. There's no question. I mean, when the playoffs started, not very many people were picking them to roll Ottawa the way they did.
Right.
There were a lot of people who thought that was going to be a challenging series, and they rolled them. Now, I think everybody agreed that the one first-round series that was quote unquote the free space for whoever faced them in the second round was Pittsburgh and Philly. I think that most people felt like neither one of those teams were going to be able to hang with any of the other 6 playoff teams in the East. But the way they handled Montreal, this is the best team in the East. They deserve to be in the final, and they're there. On the other side, I know we talked last week, and I'm not, believe me, I wasn't picking our last show. I wasn't picking Vegas to beat Colorado, but I did pick it to be a 7-game series. I thought all year long, and you and I have talked about this. I thought Vegas was the third best team. I thought they were the third best team in the West. I thought they were behind Colorado and Dallas. I thought they were, and I really thought they had a chance to be as good as anybody in the West if they got any goaltending whatsoever. And I think a lot of people are talking about the impact John Tortorella has made on this team, and I don't think it's a small thing, but their save percentage was 87 when he took over, and it's been 92.5 since. Goaltending can make any coach look brilliant. You go up 5 percentage points in your save percentage, and that's why, what are they now, 19-4-1 since Tortorella took over, and that's been the big difference. I've really liked the way this roster was built. I think they're a handful when they're healthy, if their goaltending is even league average, and it's been better than league average, and maybe that's a part of Tortorella's role. Remember that he had Carter Hart in Philadelphia, and Hart was really starting to play well at about the time that he had to step away from the league, and we don't need to go down that road again, but maybe he's helped stabilize Carter Hart's game. I don't know. He hasn't said much about what's going on behind the scenes there, nor of any of his players, but it's a Vegas team I like, and actually I'll be surprised if Vegas doesn't at the very least make this a long series. In fact, I'll take Vegas to win this series. The only way I think Carolina wins is if Carter Hart goes back to 87%. I think if he continues playing the way he's playing, I think Vegas wins this series.
Yeah, I picked Carolina in 6, but I'm not confident of it. It might be recency bias. I just think they're so relentless. But the reality is they don't have a player like Jack Eichel, and they don't have a player like Mitch Marner and Freddie. No. Freddie's got obviously.
And I think those other guys, the guys that right now, guys like Mark Stone, William Karlsson, those guys are such valuable guys in their roles for Vegas that have won before. And Karlsson looks like he's back on top of his game. I think that team is deep.
Karlsson getting healthy, like if Lausen plays tonight, they'll be healthy for the first time all year. But Karlsson getting healthy has been huge for them. And Freddie also, obviously, he lost his agent Claude Lemieux. This was more than an agent-player relationship. This was his mentor. So you do have to wonder how that affects him long term. I laughed when you were talking about Tortorella before because it was funny. Yesterday in the press conference, it was so bizarre. So he wouldn't really talk about anything. And then, he didn't want to talk about players. He didn't want to talk about, it was typical John. He did it in an affable way, but it was pretty funny. And then all of a sudden, everybody was making fun of this after, and I didn't even pick up on it, but I asked him about Pavel Dorofeev, and he then gave the longest, expansive, comprehensive answer to me about Pavel Dorofeev. And everybody was kind of stunned because he wasn't going to talk about anything during this press conference. And then all of a sudden, he just raved about Dorofeev, which is, it was just kind of funny. So maybe he read the article that I wrote on him yesterday with Joe Smith that just raved about him, and he was just throwing me a bone or something. Well, Anthony, thanks a lot. I know you got a long day ahead of you. Thanks for getting up bright and early to do this podcast. Thanks to our incredible sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Onyx Maps, Great Clips, Stretch Labs, and Lucy nicotine pouches. Thanks, everybody.
So much coming out, there's no